On this episode of Boxing World Weekly, Golovkin is back, the best body bashers, and welterweight unification.
And that's it! It's over!
Fans always like to speculate on when careers are coming to an end. In team sports, it's a bit easier because there are distinct seasons where one can just say this year will probably be their last. But predicting a single game would be much more difficult, which is the case for boxing. Regardless, the prediction is never true until the announcement is officially made. And even then, it's not a guarantee, as Floyd Mayweather has shown multiple times. The next legend in the sweet science that might be nearing his final scrap is Gennady Golovkin. 39 years old, 43 fights, one of the best middleweights to ever strap on the gloves, and is a surefire first ballot lock for the Hall of Fame. He is set to take on WBA Super World Middleweight Champion Ryota Murata in Japan on April 9th. And then, if all goes accordingly, he will finally get the trilogy with Canelo Alvarez on September 17th. Is 2022 his final hoorah? With the career he's had, it's looking like this might be the perfect finale. Triple G holds the record for the most title defenses in middleweight history. He has conquered this division his entire career, being a unified champion, beating other title holders, and taking on pound-for-pound stars. The clash with Murata would be another unification opportunity, going up against another well-respected champ. The Japanese Olympic gold medalist was the first man to stop Hassan Adam in the rematch back in 2017 when he beat him for the world title. After defending the title one time, he lost the belt on points to the hard-hitting Rob Grant, but then avenged that loss in the rematch with a stoppage in the second. From the Canelo aspect, win or lose, to go out with a valiant effort against the pound-for-pound king who is in his prime, to put to rest a historic trilogy, just seems like a storybook ending, with nothing left to prove. Also, with the fight taking place in the Super Arena in Saitama, Japan, just outside of Murata's hometown, holding nearly 40,000 fans, this will be a massive payday for both fighters. Win or lose, these fights might be the best way for Triple G to end his Hall of Fame legacy. But if Golovkin goes out there and dominates Murata and grabs his first official win over Canelo, then maybe the call for his conclusion was premature. Even at 39 years old, the Kazakhstan native, regardless of his slight decrease in speed, he would still stand a chance against a prime Jermall Charlo or Demetrius Andre. All good things eventually come to an end, and Golovkin was one of the best things to ever happen for the sweet science. This is a sport made for champions going out on their shield. Big stages, nice paychecks, a unification fight, and a trilogy? It doesn't get much better than that. His provision doesn't need any more padding, and these next two battles look like they could be the best stamp on the Triple G legacy.
If you love the fights, make sure to check out more Boxing World Weekly exclusives on YouTube. Full fights, extended interviews, and everything else a fight fan could want. Coming up on Boxing World Weekly, California Dreaming, and Ugas is set to stun.
Without further ado, Boxing World Weekly, speaking with the super lightweight contender and undefeated 26-0 Arnold Barboza Jr., highly ranked across the board in the sanctioning bodies. The last time we interviewed you, it was about a year ago, right before Taylor versus Ramirez, obviously the conclusion of Taylor becoming the undisputed champion. You fought one time since then, a formidable opponent against Antonio Moran. How did you feel about that fight?
It was a good fight. I just felt like, I could have done a lot more. So we've been working in the gym on a lot of things. just learning, going back to the drawing board and just learning. Wasn't really happy with my performance, but we came out with the victory, man, and that's all that matters at the end of the day. I've been wanting to get a big fight, and just can't happen. So I don't know. Right now we're still with no date yet and no opponent, and we're hoping to get something soon, man, real soon. I want to be in the ring, that's like I said, I can't wait, for nobody. I can't wait for Teofimo. I can't wait for, none of these guys. If they don't want to fight, man, I got to get in the ring. So that's what we're trying to do right now, man, is just secure a fight date, and secure, something, and hopefully, man, get back in there, because it's that inactivity, man. It's not good for me. You know what? I think Jack Catterall did a lot better than people expected. I know I was one of them, but I don't know what happened with Taylor. Maybe he has trouble with lefties. I don't know. Maybe Catterall's that good, or maybe Taylor had a bad day, or maybe he just couldn't make the weight right. I don't know. Who knows? But the point is that, Catterall did good. That's a fight that I really would want. I think that fight makes sense, right now. I mean, that's a fight that I would love to go out there and fight him. I said that I would go out there and travel out there and fight. I'm just trying to get a big fight, man. I want a meaningful fight. I'll fight any of the top 5 guys. I don't care, at this point. I had my eyes set just on Teofimo at one point, but now it's like, I gotta move on from that kid, man. And Jack Catterall, man, he's a good talent, but I think that I'll take that fight, man, and I'll win that fight convincingly. Yeah, of course. Every time you watch fights, you learn more things about an opponent, future opponent. But I also think, watching, that fight, there's a lot of stuff that can be capitalized on. But, again, he's not going to fight the same way fighting me or someone else. You're always going to change it up because you're fighting a certain different style, So I'm not a lefty, so I'm not going to, make the same mistakes as Josh did or do things that he did, So, I'm just ready for anything, man. And I hope, I can get like a Jack Catterall. I mean, I don't know when he's planning on fighting again, but hopefully we can get something going, man, soon.
How do you think Taylor will do at welterweight, since that seems to be the inevitable move he makes next?
I think he'll come out strong. He's a very good fighter, very good boxer, man. He has very good technique, very smart. I'm looking forward to seeing it, man. Looking forward to seeing what he does.
Every boxing fan is a headhunter, and there is good reason. Nothing is as definitive as rendering a person unconscious with a devastating blow to the head. But while some defeated foes are granted the mercy of sleep, some knockouts are the result of a precise and persistent reorganization of internal organs. Body shots can leave any boxer breathless and gasping for air. One precise liver shot will have any fighter fall to the canvas and struggle to get back up. In this week's Top 5, we are taking a look at the fighters who can completely obliterate torsos. Vasili Lomachenko, the former 3-division world champion, continues to demonstrate his power, quickness, and precision as one of the best inside fighters in the sport. The Ukrainian-born is one of the best technical fighters in the modern era, with his use of perfectly executed feints, traps, and angles. It has allowed Loma to set up openings which opponents don't even know they have. Loma's very first professional fight was a knockout due to the midsection mauling on Jose Luis Ramirez, and his destructive campaign against the well-being of human torsos has continued through his remarkable career. Lomachenko is number 5. How did Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez conquer 4 divisions? The answer? Body shots in his signature right hand. Okay, there is more to it, but if this man punched anybody in the stomach, best of luck standing up. Gonzalez was under the study of the late great Alexis Arguello, where he learned combinations, flowing seamlessly from uppercuts to straight right hands and utilizing speed, and also a mean combination down low. Chocolatito is and will go down as one of the best body destroyers in modern times, and fighters all around the world should hope he will retire soon, so their stomachs can finally start to ease. It is true, too much Chocolatito will cause a tummy ache. In the history of boxing, what's the first body shot knockout that comes to mind? How about Josh Taylor's first round stoppage of a pin in Kong Song? Well, maybe not, but you should check it out. The left hook completely stopped him dead in his tracks. It happened so quickly the announcers couldn't believe it, and people at home had to wait for the replay just to realize what occurred on their screens. The undisputed champ has made a career of using pure power to the body to batter his opponents. The king at 140 wants to move up a weight class. So, everyone that's in welterweight better start working on those six packs because Taylor will be aiming for that midsection and those belts. Naoya the Monster Inoue, an accurate nickname due to his punching power and relentless body attack. Just ask any opponent who has the displays of battling him. The monster lives up to his nickname with clean combinations, finishing his opponents with hard hooks to the body. Inoue has demonstrated throughout his whole career the importance of body work by targeting his opponent's floating ribs on either side and straight step jabbing his opponent's diaphragm. Inoue won't change up his tactic anytime soon, so the body shots will just keep coming, and at 28 years old, more greatness is yet to come. Canelo Alvarez has shown time and time again why he deserves to be number one. His power is unmatched. He's the king of setting up opponents and has a ruthless barrage of punches. His last 4 matches gave up their O and their straps in the process. Smith's right arm was rendered useless. Yildirim looked like Alvarez's personal punching bag. Saunders was cocky the entire fight until Canelo literally broke his face. Plant had never been knocked down until he was faced with Alvarez's game plan of body work. And after working the body for 11 straight rounds, Plant was introduced to the canvas. What's the one thing all these bouts have in common? Body work. Why is that? Alvarez, just like anyone on this list, understands the importance of crushing the body to destroy the head. As with every aspect of the pound-for-pound champion, young fighters should study his body work and just pray they aren't his next victim. Canelo Alvarez is number one.
On May 7th, Canelo Alvarez will once again dive into light heavyweight waters as he takes on long-reigning champion Dmitry Bivol. Canelo is no stranger to 175-pound gold, having knocked out Sergey Kovalev for the WBO strap in 2019. But despite Mexico's incredible championship accomplishments across the sport, not many Mexican boxers have held light heavyweight gold. In this week's Boxing World Weekly Trivia, we want to know, who is the only other Mexican fighter to become the light heavyweight champion of the world? The answer later on.
If you love the fights, make sure to check out more Boxing World Weekly exclusives on YouTube. Full fights, extended interviews, and everything else a fight fan could want.
After the break on Boxing World Weekly, lightweight clarity and Spence's true greatness. Welcome back to Boxing World Weekly. Before the break, we asked, besides Canelo Alvarez, who is the only Mexican fighter to become the light heavyweight champion of the world? The answer, Julio Cesar Gonzalez. On October 18th, 2003, Gonzalez shocked the world by besting undefeated light heavyweight legend Dariusz Michalczewski via split decision for the WBO light heavyweight crown.
The current lightweight picture speaks more than 1,000 words, but those words are all synonyms for confusion. There might finally be some clarity, however. For a few years now, the constant argument was, who was the WBC champion at 135 pounds? The guys involved in that debate haven't fought each other either to solve any of those debates. But now, that has all changed, or at least it looks like it will. A new picture has begun coloring itself in, of a true WBC champion, which will also provide an undisputed king. The confusion started when the best in the sport in the face of boxing, Canelo Alvarez, was honored with the WBC franchise title, which was meant to still honor him as a world champion, but without dealing with mandatory defenses. For him, it made sense because it didn't look like anyone could beat him, and no one has since he was given that status. But then another pound-for-pound star wanted to be on the same status, and that was Vasili Lomachenko, who granted had done a lot to deserve it, but it still didn't seem like the right move at the time. And in hindsight, it most definitely wasn't. The big reason was because he vacated the WBC world title to become the franchise champion. The other problem was he didn't continue to win. He had his status erased when he lost his 3 world titles and the franchise title to Teofimo Lopez, and then a title that was honorary all of a sudden became transferable. This also meant a WBC world champion needed to be written in black and white. That ended up being in an email to the interim champ at the time, Devin Haney. This began the arguments. Who was the true WBC champion? Was Lopez undisputed? Did Haney deserve it? The list went on. But the only way to clear that up was having Lopez fight Haney. This was the problem just amongst the guys holding the titles. This division was stacked and is stacked with world title talents like Gervonta Davis and Ryan Garcia. But even though they were being mentioned in the same breath as the 4 Kings, they weren't actually fighting each other. Then, in Lopez's first defense of the Alphabet titles, not against Haney, rather a mandatory challenger in George Kambosos Jr., the belts would change hands again, with one of the biggest upsets in 2021. From Lomachenko to Lopez to Kambosos, 135 has had major changes to the WBC franchise champions of the division, but there has been one constant in the last 3 years, and that's the reigning and defending WBC world champion, Haney. In each time the titles change hands, the boxing world, and more than likely Haney himself, wanted to clear up any debate about who was the real champ. After Kambosos shocked the world by outpointing Lopez to take the belts away, it looked like there were 2 options for who got the next shot. Haney, who would solve the WBC issue and crown an undisputed king, or Lomachenko, who had earned himself a spot to be talked about in the title picture again after he outclassed former world champion Richard Comey a couple of weeks after the Kambosos upset. From there, Loma had edged out the competition to land a shot at the belts. But unfortunately, with his country's political battles ongoing, a new figure needed to emerge. And finally, it looks like the boxing world will do what makes the most sense and take 1,000 words into 2 names to crown one king. George Kambosos versus Devin Haney for the true, undisputed lightweight championship.
If you love the fights, make sure to check out more Boxing World Weekly exclusives on YouTube. Full fights, extended interviews, and everything else a fight fan could want.
Up next on Boxing World Weekly, 175 pounds of destruction and Spence versus Ugas.
Everything is bigger in Texas and in boxing. On April 16, 2022, history will be made at AT&T Stadium in Dallas, Texas, USA, with a rare welterweight unification fight between the 147-pound kingpin and unified champion Errol Spence Jr. versus the WBA super title holder Yordenis Ugas. Sugar Ray Leonard versus Thomas Hearns. Felix Trinidad versus Oscar De La Hoya. Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao. The welterweight division hasn't witnessed a lot of champion versus champion matchups, but the ones they have are some of the biggest fights in boxing's history. The stage is set for this battle to be another one for the books. Spence has already put himself into that conversation with his Fight of the Year candidate back in 2019 when he earned his unified titles by beating the always sizable challenge that is Sean Porter. That's when the truth came out. The boxing world was put on notice and he became a pound-for-pound mainstay. Unfortunately for Spence, a lot has happened since then. In October of 2019, only a couple of weeks post-Porter, he had a tragic car accident that he was lucky to come out alive from. Most would let this massive setback keep them away, but just over a year later, he was miraculously back in the squared circle, defending his titles against 2-division champion Danny Garcia. It didn't look like Spence had missed a beat as he rose to the occasion and dominated to a unanimous decision. The truth was back and ready to make bigger moves. Amongst Ryan Garcia, Terrence Crawford, and even Jake Paul, it was Spence who won the Manny Pacquiao sweepstakes and was set to add a win over a legend to his already stacked resume. But life hit again. During camp, he found out he had a detached retina, was forced to have surgery on his eye, and had to withdraw from the fight. Something so small can make such a big impact. Luckily for the sport, there was a very worthy replacement who was already scheduled to fight on the card. Yordenis Ugas. No stranger to large obstacles, it hasn't been easy to get to where he is today. The Cuban native had started boxing at the age of 6, represented his country on the world amateur level, winning gold in world championships and a bronze in the 2008 Beijing Games. Like many other Cuban athletes though, he was faced with the reality of better opportunities elsewhere. After several attempts, he made it to Mexico, and from there, he went to Texas to begin his pro career. In 2010, he started a new life and a new boxing journey. After 3 losses in his first 18 fights, he questioned his place in the sport and decided to retire in 2014. Over the next 2 years, he stayed with fellow Cuban athlete and friend, professional baseball player Aroldis Chapman, who offered him a fresh start in Las Vegas. In other words, a restart. Ugas returned in incredible fashion in 2016, taking on undefeated contenders and tough opponents, all leading up to the biggest fight of his boxing life, a world title shot against Porter. Just like every Showtime Sean Porter fight, it was a classic, and one that even Spence thought Ugas won. But unfortunately, the scorecards went the opposite way. This is what Ugas needed though, something of this magnitude that shows him he could fight at this level. He came back strong with a couple more decisive wins, earned the WBA secondary welterweight world title with his win over Abel Ramos, and then came his massive shot at Pacquiao. Taking the fight on short notice like he's done plenty of times in his career, Ugas made the most of this opportunity. He outboxed the legend and future Hall of Famer for 12 straight rounds and won the fight that would change his life again. Now holding the WBA Super World Welterweight Championship, the next obstacle, unification. These are 2 of the best 3 welterweights in the world. Both of them are very good boxers with power, toughness, and willingness to trade. This clash will be about who can pick their spots better and capitalize on the little mistakes, because there won't be a lot of them. The winner of this fight, no matter who it is, shares the same larger goal: become the undisputed champion at 147. That last belt belongs to the pound-for-pound star, Terrence Crawford. So, the stage is set. AT&T Stadium, a fight between 2 former Olympians, 2 world champions, and 2 guys that have made it through every obstacle that has come their way. Errol Spence versus Yordenis Ugas on April 16th. It doesn't get bigger than this.
Here are this week's top 5 light heavyweights: Joshua Buatsi, Gilberto Ramirez, Joe Smith Jr., Dmitry Bivol, Artur Beterbiev. Our fighter of the week is WBA Super World Champion Dmitry Bivol. The crafty 31-year-old makes the 8th defense of his title on May 7th in the biggest bout of his career as he takes on pound-for-pound superstar Canelo Alvarez.
And that's it for another round of Boxing World Weekly. Until next time, enjoy the fights.